Howdy guys, the Comics Kid 2099 here, and I want to talk to you about a movie that I watched last night called Snowpiercer. This movie is on Netflix, that's why I don't have a copy of it in my hands, and this movie came out last year in theaters, I think. Actually, it's a South Korean film, and I believe it was actually released at the tail end of 2013, but I was only hearing about it around this time, around the summer of 2014. And I remember looking this movie up, and I found out that it was not being played at my local theater. I wanted to see this movie in theaters, and it wasn't being played at my theater, and I only have one theater in my town, so I wasn't going to drive an hour to find this movie playing in another theater in another town. So I waited, and it's been on Netflix for a little while, and I finally took some time to watch this movie. And this movie, the premise is that the remnants of the human race all live on this train that is constantly in motion because planet Earth has frozen. It is one big giant solid block of ice, and this train is constantly in motion because if the train stops, then it's going to freeze and everyone will die. And the train actually breaks through blocks of ice that are on the tracks and turns it into water that everyone on the train can drink. And not only is that a problem that our characters in the movie are having to deal with, living on a train with the rest of the human race, what's left of the human race, but the train is divided up into different classes. You have the people who live in the front end. They are the elite, the high society, and they are basically, they don't have any problems. They get to do whatever they want up in the front end. And then you have the people who live in the back, who live in squalor, and they are treated like dirt by the people up in the front. And you have Chris Evans and John Hurt. They live in the back, and they are basically trying to start a revolution. And then you've got people like, I can't remember her name. It's the lady who played the evilish angel in the Constantine movie. I can't remember her name. Tilda Swinton. That's her name. She is one of the front end people, and it's a really interesting movie. I remember when this movie came out in theaters that a lot of people were talking about how interesting this movie was, and I did not see it coming just how really interesting the movie is. I thought, okay, that's kind of an interesting premise for a movie. I want to go see it. I really didn't see it coming just how mind-blowing this movie is. And I want to start this review by saying that I'm going to try not to spoil stuff. So at least at the beginning of this review, I'm not going to spoil anything. But it's going to be really hard for me not to spoil stuff, so there's probably going to come a certain point where I'm going to say, okay, spoilers from this point on. But this movie, it's got a lot of really interesting ideas in it. There's one particular point, again, trying to stay spoiler-free here, but Chris Evans is our main character, and he is kind of sort of the unofficial leader of the people in the back. He doesn't want to be a leader, but almost everyone that he knows is telling him that he is going to have to be a leader one day, including the actual leader of the people in the back, John Hurt. He's saying, you're basically our leader already. Even though I'm here, you're basically the one who's leading this revolution. And Chris Evans keeps saying, I have demons in my closet, skeletons in my closet, demons in my past, whatever. I'm not the person that this other guy thinks that I am. And he isn't, this whole thing where he thought that he wasn't worthy of being the leader, I really wasn't sure what could they possibly introduce in his character to justify this angst that this character has. And I'm not going to say what it is, but the reveal of what Chris Evans did, why he feels so guilty, it's totally worth it. I did not think that they would be able to introduce something that would make his character seem justifiably angry at himself. And I'm really glad that they took it there. I think that that was definitely a reveal that was worth it. And it's connected to a reveal about the John Hurt character. And the John Hurt character, for the first two-thirds of the movie, he is basically just, again, trying to stay spoiler-free here, but it's getting very difficult. But for the first two-thirds of the movie, John Hurt's character is basically just a stereotypical Obi-Wan figure. He was there to guide our hero and to help him, and then, spoiler, this is where I'm going to be getting into spoiler stuff, but John Hurt's character dies about two-thirds of the way into the movie, but that's not, things don't stop happening with his character after he dies, and I don't mean that he becomes a blue Jedi Force ghost to talk to Chris Evans afterwards. I mean that there is a reveal about John Hurt's character that blew my mind. I was completely unprepared for what they did with his character, and I want to watch this movie again knowing what I know about his character and just see if it's planted there. There is one particular line that John Hurt has that I know is foreshadowing for his reveal later, but I'm very curious if John Hurt was playing his character in that way, or if that was something that they didn't really let him know about it, and then he was playing his character as the old mentor figure, kind of like Obi-Wan Kenobi. But there is a very interesting reveal about John Hurt's character. I would say even more interesting and more well done than the reveal about Chris Evans' character. And that was one that I really liked. So let that tell you just how much I like this reveal about John Hurt. The whole movie, we are told about this guy who runs the train, the guy who invented the train, and his name is Wilford. And the whole movie, I kept thinking, okay, something big is going to happen at the end of this movie. I don't know what it's going to be, but something huge is going to happen. I thought that they were going to reveal that there is no Wilford, because at one point, Tilda Swinton's character, she picks up a phone and she calls Wilford, and she's saying, okay, Wilford is going to talk to you people, talking to the tail section people, and she says, okay, Wilford is going to talk to you people, and then no one is there. And I was thinking, okay, Wilford doesn't actually exist. The people in the front have just created this facade of this person who runs the train, but actually it's all of them together. Ultimately, that would have been a lot less interesting than what they did go with. Again, spoilers here, but Wilford does exist. He is played by Ed Harris, who you've probably seen in movies like the second National Treasure movie or The Rock with Nick Cage. Nick Cage is in both those movies. You've probably seen him in those movies. Radio. He's usually much more, well, I guess except for the National Treasure movie and The Rock, but usually he's much more of a nice guy. He's got this nice uncle quality to him. Not quite a grandfatherly figure, but a little older than a fatherly figure, depending on your age, I guess. Usually he's got this nice guy quality to him, and he does a pretty good job playing the role of Wilford. The problem is he's introduced so late into the movie that he doesn't get to do as much with his role as, say, John Hurt got to do with what he was doing, because he's only in the movie for less than 20 minutes. I'd say 15 minutes at the most, and he's really good in his role, but ultimately, because they put it off till so late in the movie, he doesn't get to do as much with it as some of these other actors get to do. And there is a lot of really interesting ideas at play in this movie. The ideas of balance, there's this whole revolution going on this train throughout this movie, and pretty early on, about halfway into the movie, Tilda Swinton's character is talking about only twice a year do they get to eat sushi, because if they eat it any more often, then that will disturb the ecological balance of all the fish that they have on the train. So they can only eat sushi twice a year. And that is something that plays into the plot of the movie later on, and I don't want to get too much into the themes of the movie, because then I'll just be talking about this movie for an hour. But that's something that was introduced very well and executed very well. This movie is a rated R film, so if you are squeamish about violence or about hard language, then avoid this movie, because this has a lot of both. The hard language, that's something that I can take it or leave it. It really doesn't impact me a whole lot either way, but the violence in this movie is very several times something happens and I'm like, oh, they're doing that, they're going there. And it's something that it's definitely going to catch you off guard. Even if you think, oh, I watch such and such movies, I'll be fine, this won't bother me, it's still a little gruesome. And I'm not saying that as a bad thing. I'm saying that as it's definitely going to catch you off guard, almost certainly, unless you've seen something even worse than this movie, which is probably possible. So maybe this won't catch you off guard. It caught me off guard. I really love this movie, and I know I have jumped around a lot. I've tried to avoid the really huge spoilers. I did have a few minor spoilers, but I've tried to avoid the huge spoilers, because this is a movie that I think if you know the ending, it will lessen the impact for it. If you haven't seen this movie, please don't seek out the ending. Go watch the movie first. You will definitely not, you will not regret that. I really enjoyed this movie. I'm really glad that I didn't know more about it going into it. This is a movie that I wish I had seen it in theaters, but hey, I got to see it now, so that's that. I enjoyed it a lot. I can't really think of a whole lot of really big problems with the movie. There's some minor problems. For example, there's this one character, I think he's played by Jamie Bell, who was in the movie Jumper, and who's actually going to be the Thing in the upcoming Fantastic Four movie. But Jamie Bell's character, I'm 99% certain that is Jamie Bell. The movie wants us to think that he's 17 years old, and that Chris Evans is like 34. In actuality, in real life, Jamie Bell is much closer to being Chris Evans' age than he is being 17. And when that was mentioned later in the movie, I was like, hang on a second. Jamie Bell's not 17. Nice try, movie, but no. And that wasn't a huge thing. And also, at different points in the movie, we find out, okay, this is where we get that. This is where we get this. For example, we find out how they are able to drink water on this train. It's because every time the train runs into a huge block of ice, it absorbs the ice somehow and turns it into water. Now, I was under the impression that everybody drank water and then they put it into a system and the system cleaned the water and purified it and then they drank that. I was under the impression that that was where their water came from, and I'm sure there's a lot of that going on, but they also get new water on the train. Well, then at one point, they keep talking about, oh, up front, they get to eat nice juicy steaks, and we want some steaks. And then at the end of the movie, when Chris Evans goes into the front of the train, Ed Harris's character is cooking some steaks. And the whole time during that scene, I was like, where have those steaks come from? Are you eating human beings? And ultimately, they don't reveal where the steaks come from, but they are not eating human beings. So that's something I guess they could have done that would have made me even more ew at this movie, but ultimately they didn't do that, so that's fine. But really, there's not a whole lot of really major problems with this movie. I really enjoyed it. I thought it was a very well done movie. It's one that I definitely want to watch again in the future, but I don't want to watch it too often because I feel like it would lose some of that specialness for me if I watched it, say, once a month. But I do want to watch this movie in the future. I enjoyed it quite a bit. I hope that you guys were interested enough in hearing me talk about this movie that you will go and watch it, and I hope you guys liked this review. If you did, be sure to like, share, comment, and subscribe, and I will be back with you guys later in the week with another video. So until then, I'll see you guys next time. Have a great rest of the day.